Breaking away from society over this holiday period has given me a chance to think about what may be coming up for the markets. But the thing is, the markets are made up of people, so we can kind of marry the two together to paint a bit of a picture of what may be around the corner. Now, as many of you will know, I'm preparing for the greatest crash of our lifetime. Now, there's still a little bit of time to go before we get to the peak, at least the way I do see the market. But if we're thinking about what could be coming up, if the markets are going to be having a great crash, it's not just the markets that will be experiencing a tough time. I'm also talking socially, of course, economically, culturally, politically. It all does tie together. I'm going to preface this video by saying I don't know what the hell is going to happen tomorrow, let alone in a few years from now. But what gives me confidence is that in a very short space of time, the world as we know it will look very different to how it does right now. And I'm not even talking about 10 years from now. I'm talking about as short as 3 to 5 years away. What gives me confidence to say that? Well, there are a number of factors. There are obvious ones like AI and war, and not so obvious ones such as groupthink or governments launching their own digital currency pilot programs. Now, I'm going to get to all of that in this video, but I'll start off with the obvious one being AI. There are no shortages of predictions with how artificial intelligence will shake up the world. It already is on many levels, but we likely haven't seen anything yet. The jobs that AI is taking will lead to a growing class of unemployable people. I've already seen some level of this with retrenchments and redundancies in a number of different industries. Now, I believe there's no longer going to be a first or second class citizen. There's actually going to be a useless class. And I think that trend is going to be continuing in a very big way with AI taking these jobs, them not being able to get employed, at least not easily. And I think that class of people, unemployable people, useless class, is going to continue to grow. Now, this is where discussions around the UBI or universal basic income come into the mix. I'm not going to talk about that too much in this video, but that also does tie in with the CBDCs, which I will be talking about, the central bank digital currencies. We're heading into a time where learning a skill and relying on that one skill to keep you employed, to keep a roof over your head, to keep food on the table for your family until retirement is pretty much dead in the water. I think there's an increasing chance that needing to reskill at least once, but more likely multiple times in our lifetime just to get or hold a job is fast becoming a reality for many, and maybe you've already experienced this. Not only is AI shaking things up, we have a growing unrest and threats of war. This goes for both internally and also externally. And with this internal and external conflict on the rise, it just increases the chance of there being some larger global conflict and war breaking out. Now, we have our governments and ourselves to thank for this, as many topics just become so polarized to talk about, and that often leads to this unrest and just general uneasiness, which I think a lot of people are thinking and feeling. Now, groupthink, I believe, has taken a hold of many as well. Curated social media feeds have led to closed-mindedness or one-sided points of view, and really what that comes down to is a decreasing ability to think for yourself or to think critically. Now, there is something we can do about this, and it's actually quite simple, and that's just looking for things in common. It's way too easy and way too often do people just look for the differences in one another instead of the similarities. And something easy to do is just simply turn off social media or mainstream media and get outdoors in nature. But I digress. This conflict, both locally and internationally, doesn't seem to have run its course. Typically, things need to completely break down before they can rebuild. And since it doesn't seem like this conflict has run its course, there's probably a little bit more pain ahead, unfortunately. And I hope I'm wrong on that. Hopefully we have seen the worst of it. I'm just not yet convinced. I'm also going to get a little bit political, but make no mistake, I'm not a fan of either side, the left or the right. So I hope this comes across as an impartial view. But what we have is right-wing leadership coming into office, and many would argue that it's a hard right view. Now, this energy has the potential to further divide things between the left and the right. There's going to be bills put forward and laws passed, which may do plenty of good in the short term, but the bigger picture implications will not be seen for some time to come. Now, in actual fact, I think the same would be true if the Democrats had won. It probably would have made no difference considering the polarity between the extremes. We've got extremes on both sides. So the effects would very likely have been the same. But when it comes to politics, left or right, I'll leave you with this. I don't think either side really has our best interests at heart. So if you must pick a side, pick your side and your community. Look for common ground and do whatever the hell you can to become independent from the government. You don't want to be relying on the government for anything. This leads me to the CBDCs. I'm currently of the view that CBDCs, which many countries already have in a pilot program, will emerge in a big way when we get this next crash. They'll roll it out when people are struggling the most, and it will seem like the answer to help the most people. But remember, the most dangerous words are, I'm the government and I'm here to help. And I do think these CBDCs are going to be a way to kind of infiltrate the system when nobody's really looking, or at least when most people are in desperate need. Fiat currencies will continue to get eaten away by inflation. History shows that. And if you think about the debt ceilings, which just keep getting raised, or the national debts, which they're never going to get repaid, well, at least I don't think they are. I think what's probably going to happen is that they're just going to get redefined and basically become meaningless. And the government CBDC, which is essentially an altcoin if you think about it, an alternative coin to the fiat currency, is what's going to become into effect in a big way. Now, it could be pretty early in that prediction. It may not be this crash, but the next crash. But I do think this crash is when they're going to actually roll them out in a significantly bigger way. Most countries already have pilot programs in play for the CBDCs. Some have already rolled it out, but only a small fraction. But I do suspect that if and when we get this next major downturn, they're going to become much more common ground. So what's of probably most importance right now is how reliant you are on the government. If you're dependent on the government for any type of support, be it welfare or rent assistance or disability allowance or food stamps or whatever it is, you'll probably have to sign up for the CBDC program with a digital ID, and you'll be at the whim of whatever the currency is programmed to do, whatever the government allows you to do with that money, because they're going to give the government full control and full insights into not only what you're doing with your money, but what they actually allow you to do with that money. Behind the scenes, and this is a pretty dystopian view, but fiat currencies will become increasingly worthless. I don't think anyone's really going to debate that, but you'll probably never be able to leave the country again, because all you have is the CBDCs, which will be worthless in other countries, or at least have a significantly different exchange rate. What other country is going to want to accept a digital currency from a different country? Because they're probably going to have their own. You know, maybe there's some other exchange rates that go on there that you can get pennies on the dollar, but that of course all does remain to be seen. But hopefully, if you can't leave your country, you can afford a good headset and do some VR travel for virtual holidays. Now, that's probably one of the absolute worst case scenarios, but when you put the pieces of the puzzle together, it doesn't seem like that much of a stretch for at least some of it to come to fruition. And it isn't all doom and gloom. The markets are still in a raging bull market. There's been no signs to suggest it's come to an end. Prices are still rising. I'm just merely thinking about what could happen as we get into the peak of the cycle and what comes next, so I can prepare accordingly and hopefully give you guys some ideas on how I'm thinking about the market. So if any of this resonates with you, you can put some plans into action as well. But every negative has an equal and opposite positive. So energy just doesn't disappear, it just changes state. So it's up to us how we want to use that energy and how we're going to shape it to benefit ourselves and our family and friends and community. So while there appears to be the need for this big crash and a major reset, basically globally and not just economically, like I said earlier, culturally, politically, etc., etc., new opportunities will be born and the cycle will just rinse and repeat. So of course, none of what I've been saying could come to pass. You know, you need to be the judge of that, see what kind of makes sense and what doesn't, and have a plan to take advantage of both the run up and the run down. But what this is all about is just setting yourself up for freedom. That really is the end game. You want to be, or at least in my opinion, you want to be as independent as possible from the government, because that's going to be giving you economic freedom. You want to look for common ground with one another, because that's going to be giving you the freedom of polarity. Polarity is just getting worse and worse. At least that's the way it seems. And you also just want to limit or eliminate your social media and mainstream media and get into nature more, because that's going to be giving you freedom of the mind and body. So yeah, that's all I've really got for you in this video as we close out 2024. I hope you guys had an absolutely fantastic 2024. I know that might have seemed like all doom and gloom, but we're still in a major bull market. I still think we've got one more final push up to go. And then how things transpire from there, of course, is anyone's guess. But I'll continue to share my thoughts with you guys online. Wishing you a very happy new year and all the best for 2025 and beyond.